My mom is from the city, my dad's from the country. But my dad grew up basically like barefoot and climbing trees, you know, real into nature. And he was a hard worker, a real alpha male. If I had to like crown somebody in my life as like the preeminent alpha male, it's my father. A great leader, strong man, and my mom, an amazing woman, caretaker, wife. And so I was blessed to be raised in a strong traditional family. In both regards, both academic and religious, spiritual, we try to escape. We try to escape with facts and ideas and dreams, scientifically. And then religious people do the same damn thing. They escape with nirvana and heaven and all high qualities. But we're here. So as long as we are in the 3D, as long as we are in flesh, we must honor every aspect of it. In order for our intelligence to be as sharp as is possible, and for us to be as clear and open for communication with God, we have to be physically fit. Intelligence is of the head, of the heart, and of the instinct. You got intellect, instinct, and intuition. It's these three eyes. So this internal knowing, this internal instinct, and the intellect, they come together to create intelligence. Intelligence is a holistic thing. Everything that I do, I leave it all on the table. If I speak to that 99-year-old guy, I'd be like, dude, everything that you did you leave it all on the table every time? And if he nods at me, he's like, yeah, I said, then you're Elliott Hulse. Otherwise, you're an imposter.
Welcome to episode 95 of American Real, where this week we head down to Saint Petersburg, Florida, and visit Strength Camp, started by today's guest, Elliott Hulse. Elliott is an internationally renowned strength and conditioning coach, strongman, author, mentor, and holistic life coach. I was first introduced to Elliott Hulse through his appearance on London Real, and I followed his journey for the past few years and his mission to make men strong again. Elliott is an advocate for the alpha male, often describing how our society is faced with a masculinity crisis. He and I go deep in this hour-and-a-half-long conversation, and where his strong personality shines through as we cover his 4 F's: fasting, fitness, fatherhood, and faith, and we also discuss his opinion on the media, Hollywood, and even his position on the white male. So sit back and relax and enjoy this electric conversation with Mr. Elliott Hulse. This is American Real. I am Roger Brooks. My guest today is Elliott Hulse, an internationally renowned strength and conditioning coach, strongman, author, social media celebrity, mentor, holistic life coach, and inspiration to millions of people around the world. Your message is be the strongest version of yourself and inspire others. Elliott, welcome to the show.
Hell yeah. Thank you.
So excited to be at Strength Camp.
Yep.
This is awesome. I watch your videos for years now, and to actually be here and to witness it all.
and to have my family with me is it's really inspiring. And I'm so proud of what you've done with your life at such a young age. You just had a milestone last week on April 10th. Mm-hmm. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Welcome to your 40s.
Yeah.
How's it feel?
I feel younger. Mm-hmm. I'm getting younger. I'm turning back the hands of time.
Isn't that interesting? I guess I don't talk about this much with people, but I feel as I'm aging, I'm getting younger.
Oh yeah.
And is it in our mind? Is that what it is?
It's in my body. I've taken a different approach to how I treat my body in the second half of my life. And so science has shown that fasting, which is one of my newest practices, I don't want to say newest, I've been doing it since 2002, but doing it to this extent, rejuvenates the body. There's a process called autophagy. I'm going to do my best to describe it, but basically where old cells that need to be purged and recycled so that new cells can emerge, happens when you fast. Only when you prolong fast, when you fast 48 hours plus. So skin gets brighter, old injuries heal. It's pretty magical.
And what about intermittent fasting? What's the difference between, say, a 48-hour fast and someone who, like me, I typically don't eat in the morning. I'll start eating maybe at 11:30 or noon.
Yeah, I think that's a lifestyle. I think it's a lifestyle that everybody should adopt. Intermittent fasting or just time-restricted eating, eating within smaller windows. The whole idea that we need to eat 3 meals a day plus snacks is antiquated. It's not valid. It's not true. And so that's a wonderful lifestyle. Prolonged fasting I started as a religious practice, spiritual practice, and then just in these past 3 to 5 years, it's amazing how all these scientific studies are now emerging. Meanwhile, we've been fasting for thousands of years. All of our religious teachers have told us that every major religion has a fasting. Greek, the Greeks and the Romans, it's just something that we've always done. But for some reason, our culture decided just to look over it, look past it, instead of just prescribe food and pills. So it's been fascinating to see these past few years where they're now digging into all of the miraculous healing and rejuvenescent benefits of not eating. I think also too, one of the reasons why they probably didn't want to dig too deep or publicize the benefits of fasting is because it takes a tremendous amount of money away from the two most powerful industries in America, which are the processed food manufacturers and pharmaceutical companies. So here we are now where, many of the mystical ideas that were brought forth from spiritual teachers are now being validated by modern science.
Yeah, and I can't help think about, because I've heard you talk about the media in the past and what that does to our society, whether it's commercials, whether it's what we watch on the news, but that all plays into it, doesn't it?
Big time. Yeah, actually I recently heard, and I'm going to get this kind of jumbled, but the term Hollywood, do you know where Hollywood comes from?
I don't.
Hollywood was a type of wood, you'd imagine, that was used by sorcerers in a Northern Europe. I'm not going to get the exact culture correct, but those that sought to manipulate the masses and they would carry a piece of a wand, and this was like their power, and it was made out of Hollywood. And so it's just so poetic that America and the world is psychologically manipulated by Hollywood.
It's like a spell, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It reminds me of Harry Potter.
We're totally under a spell.
Yeah. Is that going to change?
It is changing because of the democratization of media. The work that you do, that Brian does, that I do with social media and all these things, YouTube. It's funny because, the internet is kind of in its infancy, and as it's starting to toddle like a toddler and gain some a sense of autonomy, now, just like, the mommy state that we live in, they want to rein it in. So you ever see those kids that have like their parents have them on a leash?
Right.
So it's like, the baby was released and is growing in its autonomy, and we're evolving at a tremendous rate because of the massive amount of information. So it's interesting to see now that they're kind of like pulling back the reins a little bit. But I think once the cat's out the bag, it's hard to sort of put it back in. So I think we're seeing a big shift.
And isn't it interesting to sit back from where you sit and watch it grow? Mm-hmm. Because once you're aware that this is out there, and that if you put away the media and start focusing on self-improvement and listening and watching the things that help you as an individual, and you see the numbers grow, not only with yourself, but with many other people, influencers doing the same thing. Isn't it exciting to see that growth?
When you mean growth in terms of like people who are engaging and...
Yeah, more people becoming aware
mm-hmm.
and in touch with themselves versus influenced by the media.
Yeah. We're always being influenced. It's just instead of the influence just coming from one tube, the boob tube, it's like you can be eclectic in your source of influence now, which is interesting. It can lead you down, could lead me down some rabbit holes. So it's fun to see that if you narrow in on one tube, you can go as far as you want in absence of everything else. And in a way that kind of makes us dumb too. So it's kind of a paradox. It's like we've got all this information and we can zero in on certain things and turn out a whole lot of other things, or we could have so much information that we're just like, I say we're obese as a culture physically, but I think we're also obese with content, obese with information. When you take in so much food that it becomes useless and it's just hanging there on you, weighing you down, it's the same thing with the information. There's so much of it that's just hanging there, weighing you down. So I think that our real evolution is going to be when we no longer need outside information, because we can tap into our own intelligence, our higher intelligence. Some would say the Akashic records, all of the wisdom of all of our lifetimes.
I love that. You also talk about this being a very crucial time in history as far as we're at the end of one era and moving into another. Mm-hmm. Can you explain?
Well, there are a myriad of different ways you could look at it. I like religion and Christianity, and I like astrology. I'm kind of a weird guy. I love it all. So, from the biblical perspective, it's very clear that we are in end times. There's no question about it, that the first shall be last and the last shall be first. We are swapped in so many different ways, I can go on and on, but there are a myriad of things that just look like this, like what was once first is now last. So we're there with that. But then also, according to the Mayan calendar, the world was going to end in 2012. And there's a lot of validity to that if you study the stars. This is what all of our ancestors did as well. And it shows that we are at the end of an era, the Piscean Age, and at the beginning of a new era, the Age of Aquarius. So those are just various different modes and methods to kind of gauge where we are in the timeline of things, or in the spiral of things, if you will.
Sure. So Elliott, take us back. You grew up in New York,
mm-hmm.
right? Your family immigrated here from Belize.
Mm-hmm.
And how old were you when you entered the U.S., and what was your upbringing like?
I was born in Brooklyn. My parents came before I was born. They weren't. They didn't know each other until they came here.
Okay.
Yeah, so they met in Brooklyn, then they had me. And my dad grew up both of my parents grew up in Belize. My mom is from the city, my dad's from the country. And I think that's fascinating also. But my dad grew up basically like barefoot and climbing trees, real in the nature. and he was a hard worker, a real alpha male. If I had to like crown somebody in my life as like the preeminent alpha male, it's my father. A great leader, strong man, and my mom, an amazing woman, caretaker, wife. And so I was blessed to be raised in a strong traditional family. And I've got 3 other siblings, and I had a great childhood. I had a wonderful childhood. I suffered a little bit in school. I'm more of an active type learner, kinesthetic, and it turns out that doesn't do so well in American public schools. So they told me I had attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and gave me medication to fix me. So, you know, if I had to look back with rose-colored glasses, if I peek a little bit, that's probably like the one thing that, you know, I'm not resentful about, but I can look back and like, that wasn't so cool.
And your uncle played a major role in your life as well, right? Martial arts, gymnast.
Yup.
Working you out in the basement.
Yeah, he's a badass. So I like to say genetically I took from my mother's side the physique. You know, both my mother and my uncle are just stocky, strong. My uncle, to this day, can do backflips, and he used to chop bricks with his hands, and he did martial arts. Yeah, he was a badass. He still is. Bodybuilder, really good genetic, physical stock. And then sort of this wild man attitude I got from my dad. So I kind of like had my dad's attitude in mind, but then I got and which made really good for being an athlete, because my dad, he's a strong guy physically, but you know, more of a lanky. And so but he truly believes that he can do anything. Like one of his sayings that I adopted was like, I'll run through this wall if I have to. I actually have the physical build to run through a fucking wall. So it's like, you know, when I played football, I was on kickoff and I just smashed through people because I had the build to be able to do it, but also because of the mindset. Like, I'll just sacrifice my body. I don't care, kamikaze.
And when did that mindset start? How do you remember? Was it 8, 10, 12 when you really started to think about that part of your being?
Well, this is the reason why they gave me medication as a kid, because it's hard to physically constrain me. And then when I was a kid, it was even more so because of, you know, the lack of boundaries. So I was always the one to climb to the top of the tree. I was the one and then jump off. Me and my brother used to jump off the top of the stairs. Remember, like a lot of my friends, most of the kids in the school, in the neighborhood, they were weak. They didn't have courage, and they didn't have the physical strength that I had. I just got to be completely honest. So whenever there was like a dare or something to do, I'd be the one to do it. I remember taking shots in my stomach when I was in 6th grade. They'd line up, just punch me in the stomach, and I would get whoever. I would eat a lot, so I'd take whoever. If you punched me and I didn't flinch, I get your sandwich.
Okay, that's great.
So like, yeah, I was always that way.
But that started very young.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very interesting. So you grow up. You play sports, you play football, you go to college, and have you always been the way you are? Have you always been alpha? Or was there that little piece of you inside that didn't emerge yet? Because today it feels to me, watching from afar, that you've come out into your own 100% or pretty close.
I don't think any of us can be here without wounds, without soul wounds and weaknesses. And so absolutely 100%, I have had a whole lot of fears and animosities and angers, and all these things are emotional. And I made a lot of my decisions from that emotional, ungrounded place. I'm grateful for it, meaning like I built my business on fear. You know, I started my family, and you know, I had loans to pay, and so you know, to be, in my definition, an alpha male is to be above the emotion, not to allow emotion to move you in an irrational way, you know, making decisions. And for most of my life, and I'm sure to this day, in certain aspects, I make decisions and have made lots of decisions based on anger and fear. You know, anger, resentment, and then fear, you know, what's going to happen, or so. Yeah,
and most of us do, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So can you give us some tips, some insight? How does one get past that? I live it. You know, I'm trying to get past that. I know millions of other people live it. What success did you have in breaking through? And I'm sure you still go through it, but what are some of those success habits that you might be able to share?
Well, anger comes easy for me. I'm in Aries, which is a fire sign, and ruled by Mars, you know, Achilles. So warrior, always want to fight, you know. And so it doesn't take much for me to get that feeling my solar plexus. So meditation has been helpful for me in, you know, the past decade and a half that I've been doing it, where I can objectify, particularly anger as an emotion. That's the one that comes most unconsciously to me. So what meditation has done has just simply been the creation of a space. I forget the author of the Habits of Highly Successful People, but he says between stimulus and a response, there's a space, and in that space is where you'll find your power and your strength. So creating objectivity, creating space so that, you know, the anger doesn't overwhelm or hypnotize. You know what I mean? It comes, but it doesn't hypnotize or take over, and then, you know, you wake up and you're like, what the hell did I do? What the hell did I say? So I've been there. And then as far as fear is concerned, I know that all fears are learned. Besides the fear of loud noises and falling, all fears are learned fears. And they're fantasy. They're based on fantasy completely. So with that understanding, whenever I have a fear, I realize that it's really based on nothing, and nothing that anyone says. So like fear of judgment is kind of a big one in our society, and one that I adopted, even though I do a lot of things that that people judge. When so for example, my guys put up a video yesterday about something that I said in an interview. And it was kind of out of context, and so I could see why there are a bunch of people that are attacking me.
You were talking about women being on the pill.
Right. And so, you know, I looked at all the comments this morning. I was like, so I started having fear, because I was like, well, that's not exactly what I said. My guy took it out of context, and my mind started spinning. But then it didn't take long for me to be like, who cares? It's one post. It's a bunch of people who either took it out of context or they're responding based on their emotion. And there really is nothing to fear about, because the government's not going to come get me. My house is not going to get shot up. Who cares? Some people are upset. And so, you know, I kind of just roll with it that way now.
I'm so glad you just gave that example, because as hard as you work at what you do, you're saying that you still have this fear. Mm-hmm. It still enters your mind. I interviewed Ed Milet a couple months ago. One of the things he said, when fear comes in, he, like a scratch in a CD, he'll get it out, you know, recognize it and release it. Is that similar to you? Do you recognize it and then put it away? Don't leave it behind.
Emotion is also Abraham Hicks calls it your emotional guidance system. So emotions aren't wrong. They're never wrong, because when they are what is. So whatever comes up is what is, but they give us an opportunity to either, as a guidance system, it's like a gauge. It lets you know, oh, you're moving towards fear. I mean, we can analyze it all we want. I've gotten out of the mode of having to analyze everything, but just recognizing it. So it's like, fear is there. And so it's based on latent, old, imaginative stuff. It has no basis in reality, and just let it go.
You live in Saint Petersburg. You talked about that. Moved from New York.
Yeah.
What is it about the area, and in particular, I love the beach, so I'm just curious to hear what you feel about the beach.
Well, not just the beach, but Tampa Bay in particular is like sacred ground In fact, it's been known that Native Americans treated this area with great reverence. And it's because we're a peninsula on a peninsula. Florida's a peninsula. Tampa Bay is a peninsula. And so we've got Tampa Bay. So I'm surrounded by beaches. I've got Tampa Bay to the east, and I've got the Gulf of Mexico to the west. And so I'm surrounded by water. And being able to watch the sunrise, this is the coolest thing, over the water with the Tampa Bay is magical. I mean, watching the sunrise over the water is always magical. But then to be able to, just a few hours later, watch it set over the Gulf is miraculous. So as far as living here and being surrounded by water, that I say that that's the most beautiful gift, to be able to, I love watching the sunrise and sunset no matter where I am, but to know that I'm watching it over the water and down. Most people would have to go from New York to California if they want to do that, not me.
Yeah. What about the beach itself, the sand, the rocks? How do you feel when you're there? The salt?
I like being in nature, and I can't say that the beach is my number one place to be in nature. I like the jungle. There's a preserve right here in Saint Petersburg called Sawgrass Lake Park. Magical place where I've set my life's course there. And it's literally like a swamp. And there are old trees, and there's a path. I'll see alligators there and turtles, and that's really the piece of nature that I love. And it's funny because it's right in the middle of the peninsula. You know, we've got the water on both sides, but then we've got this nature preserve. And that's where I go when I want to connect with nature. Everybody goes to the beach. There's actually too many people there. It's probably what averts me sometime. It's all built up. You know, everybody wants to be by the water. But when I go into the deep woods, and when I go into Sawgrass Lake Park, and there you don't hear traffic anymore, you don't see anybody anymore, you're surrounded by trees, and you see the alligators and all the animals and stuff, that's really when I'm connecting.
Incredible. You talk about the 4 F's: fitness, fasting, fatherhood, and faith.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all really important things to you, if not the most important things in your life.
Yeah.
Can we talk about them?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Fitness.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it so important?
Because we're here. We, in both regards, both academic and religious, spiritual, we try to escape. We try to escape with facts and ideas and dreams, scientifically. And then religious people do the same damn thing. They escape with nirvana and heaven and all high qualities. But we're here. So as long as we are in the 3D, as long as we are in flesh, we must honor every aspect of it. There's no escaping it. In fact, in order for our intelligence to be as sharp as is possible, and for us to be as clear and open for communication with God, we have to be physically fit. You're not going to be fat. You're not going to be overweight. You're not going to be sick, sad, and depressed and reach nirvana, spiritual heights. And the same thing is with your intelligence. Intelligence and intellect, and this is where we kind of get a little screwed up in our culture. We think that people who have a lot of facts in their head are intelligent, there's a difference between intelligence and intellect. They have a high intellect, meaning they've got really good computers in here. They can remember stuff, they can recall stuff, but it's all up here. Oftentimes the people they're not embodied at all. Intelligence is of the head, of the heart, and of the instinct, of the balls. You got intellect, instinct, and intuition. It's these 3 I's. So this internal knowing, this internal instinct, and the intellect, they come together to create intelligence. Intelligence is a holistic thing.
What do you say to the guy like me, or millions of others, men or women, who are not practicing fitness on a regular basis? I guess I'm fit, but I'm not practicing fitness. I see a difference. And I know it's not, I'm an athlete, going way back. I stopped maybe, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I care about my body, I care about my diet, I care about but I'm not physically active. I like to take walks, I like to take hikes, but I'm not in the gym as a strongman. What do you say to me?
Well, you don't need to be in the gym as a strongman, but it'd be good to be the strongest version of yourself in every aspect. Then you're living a partial life, I find it interesting that I learned recently that Aristotle would only take students that were physically fit. This guy's a philosopher. And so he would have his students train with the athletes so they can think better. So looking at the human being as a holistic, as a unit, if you're not physically fit, well then you're not only not honoring that aspect of your capacity in the human realm, but you're not maximizing your ability to think deep. Thinking requires energy. The brain takes up more energy than any of the other organs. And then it's a shame also too, because our body is a gift and it doesn't last forever. The soul goes on, the spirit is forever. We know this from science, that energy cannot be, it just transmutates, it doesn't go anywhere. And there's a metaphysical part to us as well as a physical part to us. But the physical part of us is bound to the laws of nature, which is bound to deteriorate. You're gonna feel, you're gonna hurt. So while we have it, I think Socrates may have said, or Plato, not Socrates. Plato was more of a physical gangster. I think he said something to the effect of, what a shame it is for a man to live his whole life never to have reached or experienced his physical vitality. And so, it is kind of a shame. Because it's like, you came here, you have this thing, and you're gonna check out. It's like having a Ferrari in the garage, and never really taking it out for a nice spin, revving that sucker. It's like, well, what the heck? Why do you have it then?
So would you say, go in the gym, go 2-3 days a week? What would you say to someone who's not really physically?
Well, everyone's different. I think that you've got to want to do it, just like you've got to want to do anything else. We're so motivated by money because we are attached to material. And it's so funny because we spend all this time earning money because we want to. You want to because of the commercials, because of the neighbors, because of what everybody else has. So there's this wanting that we have that causes us to go out there and work our 9 to 5 and do work that we don't want to do, or whatever the case may be, so that we can earn money to have these things. But we're not true materialists in that we don't honor the only true material you'll ever own and will always be with you from the day you were born till the day you die. It's a pseudo-materialism. It's an outside materialism. I have stuff, but you have no physical health. So you've got to want to do it. And wanting to have a healthy, strong, vibrant, vital, aesthetic body has to come from in our culture, has to come from some egoic desire. Can't get rid of the ego. The ego's there. It's a matter of how is it constructed in order to support life. And so if you're wanting, make a goal to look a certain way, that's okay. I want to have a smaller waist. Measure your waist every day and make it a goal to make your waist smaller. Or for me, it has always been about performance. I used to lift, and I'd imagine when I was playing football, because I played defense a lot, and I would just play this image in my mind over and over again, and just got me so motivated and passionate and excited that I wanted to lift. Where I'd be running into a quarterback and smashing him, and his helmet would fall off and the ball would fly away. So there was this ego drive that gave me the desire to do it. So you got to find something to reach for as far as your physical fitness is concerned. Even if it's, I'm going to run my first marathon, or I want to do a pull-up for the first time. And I think it's good to have accountability. So just put it on Instagram. Today I didn't get my pull-up, I tried. And just, so there's some support. People know that you're doing something. but to have a goal.
Love that. I have to brag about my wife a little bit. I know she has goals. She hits the gym at least 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And we don't really talk about it, but I know for her, it makes her feel good. You know, and if she doesn't go, like it ruins her day.
Oh yeah.
But she's physically changing her body. Her legs are so strong. She has, over the last, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, a major improvement. And I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping a little bit of that rubs off on me. Because now that we're having this conversation, and I've been reading and listening to you, I feel like there's a component missing. And I'm not speaking just for myself. I think there's a lot of people out there, a lot of guys especially, who maybe were athletes and got into the work world or whatever it may be, and that part of their life is no longer there. So I hope for me and for many others that that's something that can be a goal, and that we start to embrace that again.
Yeah, so do I.
Let's talk about the masculine and feminine. I know you're a big proponent of the difference of both, to embrace your masculinity, to embrace your femininity. Why is that important to you? The yin, the yang.
Because it is not only the building block of the individual, of the family, of the society, it is the building block of the entire universe. Everything comes to us in contrast, negative and positive. Nighttime, daytime, wintertime, summertime. It is walking with nature. It is the most normal and natural thing. And not only that, it's where we get all of our power. It's not just like an arbitrary thing. We live in the digital age. All of this is powered by a series of zeros and ones. Power to create. So our entire digital age is masculine and feminine working together to provide the gift of the negative and the gift of the positive, to bring forth life, to bring forth art, to bring forth nature, to bring forth family. So the minute we start trying to level out what are the most, even down to the cells, like you've got neutrons and you got what is that? Protons.
That's right.
And electrons. I mean, it's there. So what are we, smarter than God to try to level these things out? We will never be, how would they like to say it, blended sex. Men are to be men and women are to be women. It's beautiful that way.
And what's the danger that we're treading?
We're walking in the realm of a lot of dangerous ideas. And so one of the great dangers to this leveling out of the sexes is, and it depends on who you ask, is the deterioration of the family structure. And I see this as an opportunity for big daddy government to step in, and big daddy, well, schools are the government, media to step in and to play the roles of the parent. So it's been said, I believe Hitler said, that if you wanted to control a people, you've got to take the father out of the home and you make the women and children dependent on the state. Well, that's exactly what's happening here, both physically and metaphysically. The fathers are not in the home. I can talk about why, but let's continue. The fathers are not in the home, and the women and children are dependent on the state, and there's bonuses for that. So for example, the welfare state is designed so that if there is a father in the home, I have family that this is what they do. If the father is in the home, they don't get as big a fat check and free stuff from the government. You literally get bonuses for kicking the father out and making sure that the women and children are dependent on the state. Other ways that this shows up is with the school, in the school system, where generations past, when the traditional family was intact, the children, particularly the boys, learned about doing You know, one of the major differences between the masculine and feminine is that the feminine is receptive and the masculine is active. Boys, like myself, when I was a kid and they put me on medication, learn by doing. They have to get out there and they have to do stuff. And the main teacher of what to do and how to do was the father or the other men. So now fathers are either working all day long and never home. Children are at school, so the government is teaching them their values. Or the father is in prison, or because divorce is so easy and people just come together and then they separate. And so, you know, we're seeing, and I'm just talking about boys because this is where I've done my research, we're seeing skyrocketing rates of suicide and a sense of apathy and depression, aggression that's unbridled, and violence, and a myriad of different ills that are a byproduct of children being born out of wedlock and single-parent homes.
Where do you see this going? Is it going to keep building and growing, or are we going to get back to a place where that male figure in the family again is necessary?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We will come back to that. Because in my opinion, the pendulum has swung as far as it really needs to go. In fact, I watched a video the other day by Dr. Steve Turley, who does a lot of, videos on conservative trends. And he has found that, he's citing research that has found that millennials, interestingly enough, but most importantly and potently, Generation Z are more conservative than, they're baby boomers who they're completely brainwashed. Not saying that derogatively, but I'm Generation X, completely TV bound kids.
Yep.
So it's interesting to see that the new generations are coming up. Each generation kind of has a disdain for the previous generations, and I love the fact that they have a disdain for late-term abortion, open borders, and easy divorce. It's interesting to see the new generation stepping up and saying, no, you know what, we're against that. They're actually becoming more religious. Religious conservatism is actually rising, particularly in these generations. So the pendulum is swinging.
You have all girls, correct?
No, 3.
3 girls.
And a boy. Mm-hmm.
Oh, you do have a boy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He's a young boy? So when he gets to that 12, 13-year-old age, what are the discussions you're going to have with him?
Same discussions I have with my daughters. I am not a fan of promiscuity in men or women. I think it destroys a myriad of different things, including our self-respect. For boys, just because we're talking about men, it creates an inappropriate relationship to the feminine, where oftentimes there's a displacement of the mommy neediness and feelingness placed upon a young girl. And then I see this all the time, then becomes an addiction, especially when they start having sex, because sex then becomes emotional. And then all of the shadows show up, all the anger and all the jealousy and all the fear that's associated with losing mommy then gets placed on all that emotion gets placed on the girl. And then, I see it all the time, their hearts get ripped out of their chest because, of course, they're young and, the girl leaves or whatever the case may be. And there they are wanting to kill themselves. I mean, a lot of these kids, a lot of the boys that are killing themselves, it's because nobody loves me, no girl, or my girlfriend left me, So there's a lot of that going on. So, the most obvious, I don't want to go down that route where it's so obvious, where it's you can get pregnant and whatnot, because we chemically castrate ourselves that way also too, with pills and all kinds of shit. But the emotional maturity that needs to be present before they start having sex is super important.
I've heard you talk about circumcision and the effects of that. Most of us didn't have a choice.
No.
But now I think there's another generation, and you're educating a lot of people, where we do have choice. And the science that we've been told may not necessarily be so true, like disease.
Right.
So why is that so important to you, to talk about that and to broadcast the benefits of not being circumcised?
Because we live in a world where now masculinity is toxic. But when you consider that when a boy first comes into this world, the very first thing they have done to them is violence towards their sexuality, it makes you begin to wonder how those wounds have perpetuated themselves throughout that child's life. We know that you're most malleable when you're youngest. And to take a scalpel to a baby boy's penis and cut off what is factually the most sensitive part of the organ is barbaric and violent and wrong.
You're passionate about that.
Yeah, I'm passionate about mutilating babies.
And what does the medical community say about this? I mean, because I heard you talk about it, that it was really it's really prevalent in the U.S. more so than Europe and other Asia and other parts of the world. What is medicine saying about it?
Well, first of all, I would direct anyone who's interested to watch a documentary called American Circumcision by an awesome dude. It doesn't matter what the medical community says, quite frankly, because they're bought off and they're brainwashed and I'm not talking about all, but I'm talking about those that were interviewed in this documentary. So a lot of their assertions fly against facts, like they just don't want to hear any facts. It's almost like they get out of medical school and then they solder their head shut and it's like, well, no more information is necessary because I got everything that I need. So, long story short, who cares what they say?
It's the parents' decision.
Right, it's the parents' decision. And it's illogical. It doesn't make any sense. There's absolutely no reason to do it. It's against nature. God didn't mess up.
Right. Speaking of God, let's talk about religion.
Sure.
How were you brought up?
Catholic.
Okay. And like most Catholics, as a young man, getting older, you had some education about God. What's the difference of how you were brought up, and most of us are brought up in some kind of religion, versus today, the spirituality that you have and that you live and that you've become aware of and realized?
It's gone full circle, and I'm back at square one. And I wouldn't say that I'm Catholic, but I now understand, appreciate the ritual and the boundaries and the ceremonies and the way things are done in religion and why that's important. I went from learning, which Catholicism could be considered a conservative, which traditionally has been, a conservative Christian religion, through all kinds of New Ageism. I was a Baha'i for a while, which is kind of globalist. But then in my later phase, as I'm moving into my next half of life, and I've learned a lot about masculinity and religion and the importance of boundaries, I'm starting to see the wisdom in the Orthodox, particularly the Christian Orthodox ways. And so things like fasting, in fact, fasting is what really brought this up in me. And I started to explore. I was like, why is it that all religions had periods of fasting? And why is it that we're not doing it, particularly in a country that's traditionally Judeo-Christian? Like, people they don't fast anymore. It's like, they forgot. And so I started exploring the roots of Christianity, and it brought me to Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox Christianity. And it opened up this whole world of asceticism that seems, because we live in such a hedonistic society where pleasure wins over everything, just be happy, do you only live once, all that BS, that asceticism kind of got, at least in my mind, it was just like thrown out the window. But I've always been an ascetic guy because I punish myself in the gym. And I realized the power of discipline. That's how I built my business and all these things. So when I started fasting and taking fasting more seriously and exploring the roots of asceticism in religion and realizing just how important it was for men to bind themselves and cut themselves off and have periods of solitude and discipline and boundaries, how spiritually nourishing that is.
Has your meditation practice contributed to your new thought process?
More than anything, meditation has been like medicine for me. I can't say that meditation has given me enlightenment. I think fasting has brought me closer to enlightenment than meditating. And I use that word enlightenment physically, because I really believe the body is the mind, and metaphysically. So fasting lightens your load, lightens the body. And in that same way, I've experienced a lightness of thought. So when you fast, of course, you drop weight. You're letting go of toxins. You're lightening up. But also the emotional and the hyper intellectual load you begin to drop. So more so than meditating, fasting has created a greater chasm between stimulus and response, more objectivity in my life, more willingness to let go and let be, and to know that I don't need anything. I went 10 days without eating a couple weeks ago. To know that I don't need to eat shows me that I don't need anything. But just to come back to meditation, like I said, has been like medicine for me, meaning that maybe for my hyperactive mind or hyper-emotionality, just the reactiveness, meditation has more so than, say, like antidepressants or anti-anxiety drugs, which I've never used. Meditation creates that same sort of groundedness, so more present as a result.
Interesting. A little bit more on religion. Why do you think there's, over thousands of years, there's been so much fighting over religion? Why is your God better than my God versus their God? Why is that? Why can't people just appreciate? Because at the end of the day, my thought is, there's no wrong religion, unless it's radical, in a bad way. But whether you're Jewish, whether you're Hindu, whether you're Christian, whether you're Muslim, it's okay. Why can't people just appreciate that and accept it? Why do why are
religion,
people knocking at your door saying you have to come on my side? Curious what you think about that.
Because anytime the teacher comes with a message and then leaves, religion then becomes hijacked and politicized. So it goes from a way of liberation to a means of incarceration. So now that's when you start having the political hierarchies, and and they start getting involved. Like for example, in America, the Christian church is highly involved with the political left, and it's interesting because you wouldn't think so, but there is an agenda to feminize Jesus. There's an agenda to feminize the church to make them more receptive, which is purely politically based. The governments want good followers, good little boys and girls to do what they're told, and people who give their hearts, give their lives to religion, whatever the religion would say, they give their lives to Jesus, all the political parties need to do, all of the people who want to control have to do is to get into the heads of the preachers and to the pastors, and we see that happening.
So you think it's politically motivated or driven?
Yeah, I mean, it's been like that from the beginning. I mean, Catholicism.
Sure.
I recently learned about the split from the Eastern Orthodox to Catholicism, and this is my own. I read a little bit of it, but I started putting pieces together, and I began to realize that the split created Catholicism, which became Western Christianity, which ultimately led to the Protestant Reformation and all that. But then Eastern sort of stayed smaller and more confined to the Middle East. And what we see as a result is Western Europe and America highly politicized Judeo-Christian culture. It's not so religious as it is political. And I think that's what the Catholic Church ended up doing.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I've also been doing a lot of research over the past few years. I'm writing a novel, actually, and came across in medieval times. You know, we've heard of the Inquisition. I never really studied it, but spent a lot of time. And it was awful. I mean, the Inquisition would, if you didn't believe in the Christian way, they would kill you.
Yep.
You know, they would hang you at the stake. They would burn you. They would chop off limbs. This has been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
But in today's day and age, of course, we see the extreme of like ISIS that was around a few years ago. But do you see improvement in allowing people to appreciate each other's religion, or do you see this as a continual, conundrum?
You know, my opinion on this has gone back and forth, as with a lot of my opinions over the years. And I do think it's good to practice your religion, and that there's no reason to proselytize or try to force anybody into any mode of thinking. And so I think religious conservatism is good once you've decided where you're going to give your heart, to what religion. I think religion is good. I know it's making a comeback. True religion, right religion. The word religion even means to re-league, to reunion, to reunite. And so a true religion that reunites us, and particularly with the Father above, our eternal pattern. So I've explored Taoism and Hinduism and Buddhism, and I was a Baha'i for a while. I have lots of Muslim friends. I've been in and out of various schism with Christianity. I love religion. I do. I love all religions. I think in the West, it's important for us to have an identity. We've lost our identity in the West with this whole egalitarian, take everyone in, everyone is equal, everyone is the same, we need to all get along, which I think is idealistic and immature, and have an American, I'm saying Western, but an American identity. Just like you're not going to go, it's so funny because you got we're so idealistic and immature in a lot of these things as Americans that recently, and it's sad, but I've seen a bunch of news stories where these idealistic, hippie, leftist young people go to Afghanistan because they believe that everyone is good in their heart and we'll all get along. There was this couple that went there and they're riding their freaking bikes through the mountains of Afghanistan, and they were mowed down and killed by religious extremists. Other cultures and other religions don't want Westerners. They don't like you. And I'm not saying that that's okay, but I think there's something to be said for them knowing who they are and and knowing who they're not. Americans, I think we're a little bit confused and lost, and we think that everybody's okay and everything is okay, and I don't think that's actually the case.
Yeah, no, that's so dead on.
So I think he's a little fuzzy on this, but this is where I'm at right now.
We're in your home right now.
Yeah.
What feeling do you have when you walk in here in the morning?
I don't come here very much. This is actually not my home anymore. My old gym that I first started making YouTube videos on was my home. Okay. That was my first home. It was just a dusty little warehouse. It was me and nobody else. And I walked in there, and I used to like to watch Al Bundy, Married with Children. Yeah. And I had like the man cave. And so I used to think that like every man should have a gym. Like that's the man cave of the future. We're not gonna go drink beer and play pool. That's stupid. But like we're gonna work and we're gonna build ourselves up. And when I walk in, I would get that sense that like we're here to do work. It's a place where we're building men. And more importantly, what I felt when I left at night, because back then I was working from 6 a.m. I get there actually like 5:15 in the morning every day and I'd leave at like 8 o'clock at night. And I remember this sense of gratitude and mission and purpose when I would leave at night, and I would just thank God that He gave me this realm and this space where I can do the work that I'm doing. So the sense of overwhelm wasn't so much when I was walking in. That was more of a grounded feeling, but the sense of elation that I would have when I was leaving, it's very distinct in my mind. And then when I moved to the second gym, which is not too far from here, that's when my YouTube videos started exploding. And again, it was just me, plus he was my assistant at the time, now my partner, Chris Barnard. And it was just he and I, and we'd brainstorm on what kind of videos we're gonna make. And it was like more of my, because I stopped training as many people then, it was more of like my creative artistic studio. And like, so we train ourselves, we'd work out, but it's more about making those videos. And that's when I was like cranking out like 2-3 videos a day, bang, bang, bang. So that was the sense then, very different. And then here, I'm a stranger. I walk in here maybe twice a month. And the music sucks. I hate it. I'd much rather listen to country music and reggae. That's just me. And I don't know a lot of the people, and it's that way by design. When I left the old gym, it was time for me. God was asking me to move on to the next chapter in my life. And little did I know how much I was gonna struggle to let go. But and it was all about giving Strength Camp over to my community, and it was no longer about me. First it was just me getting it, putting the seeds, then it was me in springtime, and then it was I had to die in the flame so that Strength Camp can be what it is. And so we do really well in the city. I mean, we really provide an amazing service to what has been called the laziest city in America. Right?
No kidding.
Saint Petersburg was, I think, in one of the fitness magazines, the laziest city in America. So I'm like, hell yeah, because we're making them strong here in the laziest city. And also creating opportunities for Chris, who's my partner now, and the guys that run the gym. I just met one of our interns. So we create so much opportunity for so many people. And Strength Camp, we have an ambassador program where we're helping other trainers, other coaches build their strength camps worldwide. So I'm free now to then move on to the next phase in what I do. I always wear my Strength Camp wristband. It's in my blood. I'm a strong man. I'm a strength coach till I die. But Strength Camp now can take on a life of its own.
So awesome, just to see that growth, and you must be so proud of
I am.
that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, become the strongest version of yourself. I love it. I walk in here, and I know that my spirit is in here. And people who haven't even met me will, they say your spirit is alive in here, Elliott. Yeah, and so that makes me feel good.
You talked about gratitude. You reflected back on those early days when it was just your gym. Do you do enough of that? Do you do enough reflection on your accomplishments? Because you're young, you're 40 years old. Mm-hmm. And is that important to do? Do you feel that's important for anyone?
I don't know how much reflection is necessary. You know, because they say that you should do it, right? Like you take some time to smell the roses and look back at it as far as you've come, but I don't, and I don't even think it's that necessary. My dad says you just get up every day, do what you're supposed to do, don't think about it, and you'll be fine.
So always looking forward.
Always being present now, not even looking forward. That was one of my beta ways, was to constantly be excited about the future and looking into the future. I don't even do that anymore. I stay present with what is, and I allow my life to show itself to me. Allow it to be revealed, allow it to unfold. This is something I've had to learn to do over the past few years, which has been tremendous in reducing type A anxiety and needing to get things done and needing to have things done. So more so than looking back, which is cool, you know, someone commented on one of my videos earlier today, and they said, does anybody else realize how much of a genius Elliott is? And you know, here I am. I don't think about it because I think I've been told I have problems when I was a kid. And someone else wrote below it, it said, nope, nobody will know, and not even himself until he's dead. I was like, yeah, I guess that's right, because not until I'm dead will anything really be of any historical significance. Because still, my feet are on the earth. I'm still doing this thing. So no, I don't reflect too often. You know, once in a while, my wife will remind me, or I'll just get struck with awe. But for the most part, I'm just being present with what is and allowing life to reveal itself to me.
Cool. What about awareness? You talked about being present. I feel awareness is being present, but how important is it for someone to be aware of everything in their life at all times?
I don't know. I think there are things that you don't need to be aware about. So this is another one from my dad. He would often say, I rather just don't know. I just don't want to know. So there'd be things like news and stuff like that. So I get juiced up about some things, and like I'll come to the house talking about Donald Trump. My dad reminds me of Donald Trump, so I'm like, come on, did you see what he said? And it's totally something my dad would say. But for the most part, when it comes to a lot of like what's going on in the world, he's just like, I rather don't know. I just rather not know. I want to be aware of what he used to say. This is one of his Donald Trumpisms. He built a fence around our house as a kid, and he says that anything that's going on outside of this fence, I don't care about. My family first, and whatever's going on inside here. Not interested in being aware. My dad wasn't like one of those guys that watched sports. He didn't care about really anything besides what's going on inside this fence. And I am that way to a degree, and I resonate with that philosophy. Meaning I don't need to know everything about everything and be aware about all that's going on. For the work that I do, it's good to know. For entertainment purposes, it's nice. But really, do I need to know? I don't think so. Tim Ferriss, in his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, said something to the effect of going on media fasts. And I remind myself of this sometimes, and he says, if there's something huge going on in the world that you need to know about, trust me, someone's going to tell you.
Sure.
And so there's really no need to seek it out.
Yeah. I've taken that on the past few years, and I tell you, I feel like I could accomplish so much more by not watching the news.
Yeah.
It's a great feeling. Speaking of that, though, I've heard you talk about the media being tough on the white male. What do you say to that? You grew up with a lot of white guys. I'm sure you had a lot of white friends and interact with a lot of white men with your camps. What do you say to white guys?
It's interesting that the most socioeconomic, advanced, and educated group of people in America, upper middle class white people, are the most manipulated by the media. And manipulated in such a degree that they'll adopt any egalitarian idea, I think this is the reason why, to reduce the amount of guilt and shame that have been laid upon them from the so-called history we've been told. I was thinking about this yesterday actually too, and I'm going all over the place.
That's okay.
But you've never owned any slaves.
No.
Did your dad?
No.
Did your granddad?
No.
Great-great-granddad? Most of us today, our great-great-granddads did not own any slaves. What is the guilt and what is the shame and what is this consistent need to bow down and pander to black people or the disadvantaged when this entire society was built by the brains and the hard work of white people, Europeans? So to take on this sense of guilt to such a degree that it becomes ridiculous. It's so easy to make white people feel guilty. One of the ways to make white people, one of the fruits of white guilt is that they're having less children than anybody else. Mexicans are coming here and having fucking babies. My parents, there was 4 of us. You know, I say this as a multiracial person. I have no shame. I'll talk about all races in this way. But they're crossing the border and they're making babies. Black people are having babies. As more babies they can have, the more the government gives them, here, keep having babies. White people are not having babies anymore. They're not having babies, and a part of it, there's many different reasons. I said earlier that they're the most brainwashed. One of it is this ridiculous idea that I don't believe the story of overpopulation. And I don't think it's a good idea that white people, the people that built America, stop having children because they're trying to save the planet, while everybody else who is kind of a dependent on the system that was created by them and is becoming more hysterical in their demands for reparations and this sense of entitlement and this anger. You know, I remember, and I'm basically half black too, and I remember being angry at white people when I was like a teenager, completely unfounded, but because the history books and because of the news. And so, I'm kind of ranting and speaking in circles, but I think it's a shame. I think white people need to start having babies again, and I think they need to stop apologizing for things that may have happened hundreds of years ago, because it doesn't happen anymore. I think they need to stop feeling guilty and shameful about racism, because we don't live in a racist country. There's more opportunity for people of every single color, creed that there is to rise up. I studied W.E.D. Du Bois, the difference between W.E.D. Du Bois, and this is like where there are many different points where the African American community started to diverge. There was Booker T. Washington, who lived in the segregated South, who was an entrepreneur, who believed in building strong families and strong black men. And then there was W.E.D. Du Bois, who was silver spoon-fed Harvard graduate, who started this whole back to Africa move and this whole sense of anger and this need for justice from the black community. And so it's funny that we learn about W.E.D. Du Bois so much more in our studies and not so much about Booker T. Washington. And they went 2 totally different ways. And so there's that. And a lot of this I learned by reading Jesse Lee Peterson's book, The Antidote. He goes into the history of like where this split started happening, where the African American community started to become lazy and dependent on the state. And a lot of it had to do with the civil rights movement also as well. And where there this whole sense of you owe me something once Martin Luther King died, because that's usually when all hell breaks loose. When the real teacher dies, that's when all hell breaks loose. And like the Jesse Jackson figures started showing up, and the Al Sharpton guys started showing up, and taking this victim role and like highlighting, making the victims the hero. This is kind of where we live today, where the victim is the hero. And so it's degraded the African American community and made a lot of them angry and entitled.
Like religion, I feel the same about race. Like I love all people. You're born how you're born, right? Mm-hmm. whatever part of the world you're from. What's wrong with that? I can't wrap my mind around it. And now this whole, rant about anti-white men, when I'm, and many others are just trying to, support our family, do some good to the world, and it feels a bit insulting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so remember earlier I said that if you want to destroy a society, you take the father out of the home, make the women dependent, and children dependent on the state. It's really about taking out the general, taking out the strongest player in the game. And and in the family, the father's the leader. He's the pattern setter. It's always been that way. We've been brainwashed out of that, and then physically, that's been destroyed. But then when you look at Western society, it has been built by the ideas of white men. So if you want to destroy Western culture, which, I've got some conspiracy theories you might say about who's up to it and why they want to do it, but you take out the alpha player, and the alpha player in Western society are white men.
Talking about the alpha player, one question for you on that, Elliott. What do you say to the alpha male who is insulting and degrading, who I feel may cross the line? Okay, you're alpha, but do you see a point of crossing the line as an alpha male?
Well, when you say that, what do you mean? Because we live in a very sensitive time where, like, for example, eating meat makes people, offends people. Not calling someone Zer because they're confused about their sexuality is confusing. In fact, is offensive. In fact, I watched a Paul Joseph Watson video yesterday where, like, there's this uproar about this clown meme because he has a rainbow wig on, and so all the rainbow people are offended. So where it's so gray now that nobody knows what's actually offensive and what's not.
So let me quantify it. One of your trainers, you're watching them and you don't like exactly what they're doing, and you go up to them and you say, "You suck. You're not a trainer. You'll never be a trainer. Get out of my gym." Is that crossing the line?
Every action, no matter who it is measured by the sentiment from which it proceeds. It is where your heart is when you're saying that. So it's less about what the person's saying, and it's more about where it's coming from and the agenda behind it. So I remember, like, figuring this out once when I was a kid. I was probably about 10 years old, and I was watching the movie Harry's and the Hendersons. Did I mention this in another video and you heard it? Remember the movie Harry and the Hendersons?
I don't.
Yeah, Harry and the Hendersons is a movie about a family who's out camping, and their car runs into Bigfoot. They hit something in the car, and it turns out, whoa, there's this 10-foot hairy man beast. And so, they help Bigfoot while they're camping or whatever the case may be. It turns out Harry, they called him, is really is friendly. So he's hanging out with them. They all fall in love with him. Harry comes to their home. It's a movie from the 80s. Comes to their home, and there's a scene where he stands up and his head goes through the ceiling. So it's like, it's a mess. You can't have this freaking Bigfoot living in your house, even though they all love him and he's kind. And so I remember when the scene towards the end of the movie when they had to take Harry back to the woods. Like, Harry can't live with us. So they drive him out to the woods, and the dad is like, "Okay, Harry, you gotta go." And Harry's like, "No, I love you." And the dad's like, "Harry, you can't stay with us. You gotta go." And Harry's just standing there looking at him like, "No, please take me back." And the dad cocks back and nails him. He punches Harry. And I remember being a kid like, "Whoa, what happened? Why'd you do that?" And like feeling angry and sad at the same time. And in retrospect, I realized that that was the most loving punch to the face that man could have ever done. And it was out of love. It was like, "Harry, you can't stay with us. It's bad for you. It's bad for us. Bang, get out of here." So I bring that up because, again, it's not as black and white. It's about where it's coming from. So to say something mean to someone, sometimes that's exactly what they need to hear if it's coming from a place of, this is in your best interest.
Got it. Non-judgment. I know that's something you talk about a lot. I listen to Deepak Chopra. He talks about the importance of non-judgment. Actually, a lot of times I'll listen to one of his recordings, and he talks about not judging and giving off love to someone that may need it, or all people in the world. And I really like that, and it's something that I've been more conscious of the last couple of years. How long have you been conscious of non-judgment?
When I started taking people's judgments of me a little too seriously. And so then the judgment gets turned in on self. And as far as non-judgment is concerned, I think the very place we got to begin with is judging ourselves. All of the sense of shame, all of the sense of guilt, all of the sense of should I or shouldn't I have, or was it, looking into the past, all these kinds of things. And realizing that I was listening to an audio book by, or a lecture by James Hillman this morning, and he talks about reframing our life path. Where in psychology, he's a psychologist, they're always looking back at your childhood to determine why you are as an adult. And so, there's all this sense, all these kind of feelings and judgments, as we go where you're at. Judgments about, things that happened, things we did, things that, judgment about what dad did to me, what mom did to me, what my school teachers did to me, all kinds of judgments, and they're all self-judgments. And oftentimes, we look at our lives in retrospect, and we make all kinds of judgments about how we got here, where he says that instead of looking back, he says, look at the present, look at where you're at right now, or at the end of the life, and then allow that to tell you why those things happened back then. That way there's no that way all the judgment is seen in the right perspective. Meaning, like he spoke about like Einstein. And so first he told Einstein's story as a kid, like, he was like learning disabled, and he spoke late, and it was all kind of weird stuff, and like his parents were judging him and the schools were judging him, and it was like, this kid's he's not going to turn into anything. But then at the end of his life, you look back and all that judgment goes away, because it's like, wait a second, that's who he was from the beginning, and it was all just one thing. And so I know I'm talking in circles and I'm ranting here today, but the point is to have zero judgments about self. Anything that you've done, anything that has happened to you, forgive the people who you have judgments about what they did to you, because it was all perfect.
Yeah, no, I never heard it put that way. Forgive the people that may have had judgments against you, or continue to have judgment against you.
Or did something to you, because then you start judging. Like, so for example, I spoke about attention deficit disorder and being a kid, and like there was a time I was very angry about the whole situation. Like, they put me on drugs, and they misinterpreted who I was. But I have no judgments about it any longer, because I realized, boy, that was brilliant. I mean, that's great. I was supposed to go through that. Yeah. And it's hard to say, because I didn't have like deep trauma as a kid. We all have trauma. But I wasn't sexually abused or anything like that. So it may sound flippant for me to say, but no matter what happened to us when we were younger, we can release all judgment of ourselves and those people and be free in knowing that I am perfect, everything is perfect, and that I can drop all evaluation and just be.
Wow. You put a post up on April 2nd, and if I may, I just want to read a little bit of that and get your take. I've been getting some private messages these last few days from people who are confused about how I've been expressing myself. Something which I'm not sure most people understand is my use of discernment as opposed to discrimination, or how you say hate. I posted nothing about hate. This is your own projection. But I am aware of, and I am called to point out the hysterical calls for justice in realms where no injustices actually exist. Being pro-truth, pro-masculinity, pro-natural order, and pro-God in a world which rejects these things does not make me a hateful person. It simply means I'm not willing to sit by and allow lies and emotional outrage to overshadow what is right or real. Stop believing the fake news media. Take a deeper look at who the real enemy is. This is a spiritual battle, and if you allow emotion and irrational thoughts to dominate your heart, you are losing yourself to the dark spirit that seeks to destroy you. Mm-hmm. It's almost poetic. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious because I'm a writer, did you just write this based on your feelings? Mm-hmm. Why?
It needed to be said. I put a lot of stuff out there, and there was a time when I used to let it bother me. It doesn't bother when people would judge and people would have, say things back to me. It doesn't bother me anymore. So it didn't come from an emotional place. You said, I felt it. That really came from a rational place, meaning like people need to be put right. They need to be corrected. And so I did it almost like a loving father. Like you need to wake up. And I don't mind you judging me. And I began it with, a lot of people are very angry. But number one, a lot of it is their own projection. And it's like, you're saying things that I didn't say. And you're taking things that I said, but you got to recognize that it's because of your own emotional instability and your baggage that you're carrying around with you that you can't see the things that I'm saying without your veneer, without your glasses on. And so I wasn't, like I would have in the past, been defending myself. It wasn't about me defending myself at all, which allowed it to come out so easily. It was, every once in a while I've got to correct these people. You're wrong!
I commend you for it. Mm-hmm. Commend you for it. If you were to take out your cell phone right now and call the 99-year-old Elliott, because I know you want to live to 100, what would you ask him? What would you ask that old guy that has a lot of wisdom?
What would I ask 99-year-old Elliott? I'd ask him, did you leave it all on the field, buddy? Did you hold nothing back, no matter what? Yeah, and I'm 40-year-old Elliott, and I look back, and I'm like, if 20-year-old Elliott would have asked, I would have said, hell yeah. I mean, I did it, and I'm doing it, all of it. So I was saying to Colleen the other day that, if anything ever happens, if we're not together any longer, maybe she passes away, or that's the only way I can imagine it. I don't understand why these people get remarried. I would not get remarried. I would not do it again. You know why? Because I did the woman thing and the father thing and the husband thing 100%. Nobody did it as hard as me. No, nobody, but not as many people do it as hard as I did. We started dating when we were 14. I've been committed to this woman for 25 years. I'm 40 years old. 4 children. I went hard as hell. Strongman. I went in full bore, hard as I can, left it all on the table. My business, left it all on the table. Everything that I do, I leave it all on the table. So if I look at that, if I speak to that 99-year-old guy, I'd be like, dude, did you do everything that you did you leave it all on the table every time? And if he nods at me, he's like, yeah, I said, then you're Elliott Hulse. Otherwise, you're an imposter.
I love it. Elliott Hulse, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story with American Real followers. One last question before I let you go. I ask every guest, and that is, ultimately, at the end of the day, that 99, 100-year-old Elliott, what do you want your legacy to be here on this earth?
It's not even a matter of what I want it to be, it's what's unfolding. And I know that I'm here to deliver my consciousness to the planet. And I know that a big part of that mission is to make men strong again. And so that's the road I'm on, and I can only imagine that road evolving.
Well, thanks so much. I appreciate you doing this. Welcome to the American Real family.
Yeah, thank you.
And I hope to do it again.
My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning into American Real. Be sure to visit our website, AmericanReal.tv, or search for us on iTunes or YouTube for past episodes. While you're there, please rate us or leave us a review, as that helps others find our show. I am truly grateful and appreciate all of your support. At American Real, we're on a mission to help as many people around the world fulfill their dreams and obtain their goals. If you'd like to be part of our inner circle or want one-on-one coaching, check out the American Real Learning Academy, where we have self-help groups and courses so you can build the best you. We also have a new Facebook group where you can connect with high achievers from around the world. If you want to go even further, maybe you're determined to write your own book or launch your own podcast, contact me today to see if we could help. You can reach me through Instagram or Facebook, or email me directly at roger@americanreal.tv. And speaking of podcasting, our next course will be starting soon. So if you're interested in launching your own podcast, join me and Podcast Your Passion. I'll take you through my 8-week course where I'll mentor you to build a world-class podcast. I'm only taking on a small group of people who want to share their passion through broadcasting, where I'll have you up on iTunes and YouTube within weeks so you can podcast your passion. Click on the link below for more information. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.